Welcome to Junkyard Haunts, where we turn trash into haunts. Today we're going to be making a shrunken head. I had a small skull which I thought fit the normal size that is used for shrunken heads, so I figured I would use it as my base to model my shrunken head around it. To keep the skull safe and make sure I can reuse it, I just wrap some saran wrap around it. And then I'm going to be using Celluclay. Hopefully I said that right. Celluclay is really cheap and inexpensive. That huge bag, which basically lasts forever, was like $20, and we only use a tiny portion of it to actually make anything really, but this shrunken head does not use very much of it. From what I understand, it's actually kind of like a paper mache. It's just already shredded up for you and the flour is already in there. You just need to add water. And then we're gonna go ahead and model a face straight onto the skull. I know a lot of times when I see other projects, I'm like, wow, that finished product is really amazing. There's no way I could do that. But to tell you the truth, this is the first time I've ever even tried something especially with Celluclay, of modeling. And I think it turned out pretty good in the end. So just give it a try and see what you can do. Really, it's just a matter of actually just going in and doing it, and I bet it will turn out even better than you expected. What I do here is I put the clay on and I dip my fingers in the water to smooth and press it out. I find that helped a lot better than just trying to use my dry hand to smooth and press it out. That having a little that wet texture in your fingers really helped. So the reason you actually dip your fingers in the water to mold the clay is actually it becomes really sticky if it's slightly too dry, and the clay will just stick back to your fingers and pull itself off and separate. So that's why I keep dipping my hand in there to make sure it stays on, and it will smooth it out too. But for the most part, the Celluclay, I just slowly build up more and more on top of it. Like when I make the eyebrows, I just keep adding more clay till it looks a little more natural. And I keep building it up. I don't worry about putting a huge chunk on and cutting any away. It's more of you build it up to make sure it looks good. For this, I actually had just a picture off screen of a face that I could use to actually make sure that mine matched what a real face is. I don't have any modeling tools, but I had a pencil. So I'm actually using mainly my finger to rub the pieces in, and then using the pencil to make those small gashes or any more fine things that I needed to do, or to poke the holes in its nostrils. We're only going to do a little bit of the skull at a time. I'm only going to do the front half, and then I'm going to let that dry, and then I'm going to work on the second half. I watch other tutorials on YouTube, and they always end up bringing out these really expensive tools, or like a saw that they cut everything apart. I didn't want to do that, so that's why I actually grabbed a pencil. I also don't have the tools necessary, but just to show you that you can use literally anything to make something look pretty good. But yeah, making this is really just building up. You want the lips a little bigger, and just keep adding more clay a little bit at a time here and there. Don't put too much on, just really start little and build up. Even putting on the ears, it's just another build up. Take a big chunk and stick it on. And then I just used my pencil to kind of carve a little hole parts into it. I didn't focus too much on it because I feel like hair would probably cover it up for the most part. If you notice, the front half comes off pretty easy because of that saran wrap. And you can see on the inside it is a little wet. I think to let this clay dry, and the huge amount that I had built up, it took like 3 days to really actually let it dry. For the back, it's just a round ball that you basically make. I went ahead and used the skull so that the same sizes would match. I wasn't exact. I didn't take the time to line up to make sure that I actually used the clay to where I stopped on the front half. I just went ahead and make a ball, and if it was too big I would have just cut some off, but it turned out pretty good for me. And you notice that this does not line up very well at all. I use hot glue to glue it together, but there's huge gaps. And so I actually just took some paper mache and connected those gaps together with the paper mache so we wouldn't have giant holes and it would still be strong in those little parts. So instead of me always explaining paper mache and how to make it, I'm actually going to go ahead and link a tutorial to probably my project that used the most paper mache, so that you can, if you need to learn how to use it more, go ahead and click this link and go back and watch this video to get a better understanding. Now we're going to make a base coat on the Shrunken Head of just black spray paint, because that is the best and the easiest. You'll find that I do that a lot. Just the base coat is always black spray paint. We can definitely do different things in the future, but that's really just the quickest way is why I do it. Now Shrunken Heads always have hair on it, at least the ones that I've seen. But I didn't have any black hair that I wanted. Granted, Shrunken Heads can probably have any color of hair you wanted, but I actually had this wig. It's really crappy. It's like a plasticky type hair. And I just spray painted it black, see if that would work, and it turned out pretty good. Now I didn't want my Shrunken Head just a solid color, so I actually went ahead and added a dry brush technique when I took some brown and painted onto the Shrunken Head. For dry brushing, you actually just put a little bit of paint on the brush and then rub it off onto the newspaper, as you see me doing. So there's only a very fine, tiny bit left on the brush, and then you paint the actual Shrunken Head. What this does is it only paints basically the higher bumps that were created from Celluclay, and doesn't paint the inner crevices which should be still filled with black. Now for the hair, I'm actually cutting off just a little bit of the black spray painted. Notice I didn't spray paint the entire wig. I just cut it off a little bit, and you still see some red in there, which is fine. I actually go in and just paint it over by hand instead of by spray paint. And I just put some hot glue down and then press the hair onto it. And I just keep doing this over and over again. The secret is to pick which type of hair style you want. Like mine, I was having it go down to look more like a normal hair, and then I glue at the top and then just press it down. Where if I was gonna actually just hang this Shrunken Head from its hair, I would actually glue at the bottom and then work my way up so that the hair is pointing straight up in the end. After you get it all on, you'll notice that there is a lot of loose parts on where the glue didn't actually touch. So I just went ahead and filled in and glued back as much as I could, and then actually just pulled the loose hairs out, and even took some scissors and gave it a little haircut. From what I've seen, Shrunken Heads always have knots through their eyes to tie them shut in their mouths. So I just took some string and just gluing them straight on. I just take a little piece and glue it to each end and stick it on. But I've definitely seen some very cool, more elaborate ones where they actually have the string like dangling it down from their mouths and making bows out of it. Those are really cool, and maybe since I've seen some like that, I'll try to maybe make another Shrunken Head. If you guys are interested, try some different techniques and maybe even do stuff like that. Try to make it a little bit more elaborate. Here I didn't like the red still showing through the really cheap wig that I had, so I actually just took some black paint and just painted over the red and let it sit out to dry. This actually turned out surprisingly well. When I first had the wig, I didn't think I'd be able to change its color, but in the end, like this worked. Like you don't see any red in the final product. It is all black, just like how I wanted. Instead of having to buy a whole bunch of stuff, I always just use what I have laying around, and I had a red and black wig, so that's why I ended up spray painting it instead of just buying a new wig. Shrunken Heads are always dangled from something. A lot of times it's their hair. Like I was saying before, if you glued it facing up, you could actually use the hair and make like a bow out of it. But since I didn't do that, I wanted to tie some, like almost like a noose around it so I can hang it up from something. Why I glued it together will make sense here in a little bit instead of tying a knot, because a knot would definitely look more realistic and better. But what I do here is actually take a smaller string and glue that and wrap it around it, so it looks like I have a really like fancy elaborate knot, instead of really big bulky knots that I'd have to use if I didn't glue it together. Normally I don't show mistakes, but I thought I'd show you guys that sometimes I mess up on these. The end, I actually burn the end to try to keep it from unwinding, but that doesn't work on this type of rope. So I actually just used a hot glue gun to make a little ball at the end to seal it so it doesn't fray. In Harry Potter they have shrunken heads, but shrunken heads always mouths are sealed, so I think they screwed up. You need to fact check your wizardry, Harry Potter. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe. We should probably give this shrunken head a name. I think I will make more in the future, so let me know what I should name them. At the end of these videos, I always like to go over things that I could have done better. What would have made this better is if before I glued on the back of his head, I would have actually painted the whole front of the face and drilled holes to pull these strings through instead of just gluing them on. I think that would have made it look a lot better. But let me know what you think I could have done better, and then maybe in the future when I make another of these, we'll be able to combine what you said along with what I said. With shrunken heads, there's like a billion different ideas you can do, so I would love to see your guys' stuff. So post a link below so I can check out your images. Does anyone know the history of shrunken heads? Like I just made one. I didn't actually Google the history. Maybe I should do that. I can learn. This will be a learning channel where we learn about shrunken heads. Look, it works. So I have to listen to all day.